and one of these might be one from last week because I think the wind blew it somewhere. I found the vase all the way out there in the middle of the yard. I don't think Delilah would have done that because she doesn't like coming all the way out here. Sometimes she will chase squirrels, but I don't think that she would have did it because she would have carried a lot of stuff to do it, but it's possible that she could have. These were the vine cones that I found this week. There, and after shaking all the things. Maybe someone writes something in the house.
Welcome to a new video. This vlog doesn't have a particular theme. We're just gonna be reading and having a good old time, right? We are going to look at the weekly TBR. The first book that I start my day with, I already have read 9 pages in here today because I have to read like a little short section, is Devotions by Mary Oliver. This is a poetry collection and basically like her greatest hits album. Next we have the main focus for the vlog, and that is Theodosia Burr Alston, A Portrait of a Prodigy by Richard and Cote. This one is a biography on Theodosia. She was the daughter and only living child who made it past like infancy of Aaron Burr, and basically I don't want to make a Frankenstein comparison, but he's trying to like craft the female version of himself, but that is our main focus so far anyway. I don't know if I'll finish that this week or not. Then we have my moodery that I started last night, and this is Think of Me by Frances Liardette. We start our story with a prologue of this man who is a pilot during the Second World War, and he's on a mission. He's just praying. He's like, let me survive so I can marry my girl. The girl is Yvette, who is from Alexandria in Egypt. She met him on a chance circumstance, James, who is our male main character, because, again, he is a pilot in the war, and he is just the chaperone for the night because the other chaperone couldn't make it because her sister is getting married, so that's why the couple needed a male and female chaperone, and that is how they meet. But then we go to, and so that's all in 1942, then we go to 1974 in England. Yvette has passed away, so James is a widower, and he is trying to begin again, and he was a, I guess, priest before the war, and now he is trying to get back to being a priest again because his wife passed away, his son has gone off to college, so he's all on his own now and is dealing with being an empty nester. Lastly, we have my ebook pick, and that is Wayward by Chuck Wendig, oftentimes compared to The Stand by Stephen King. This one, we had, in the first book in the series, there is a pandemic, and there's these sleepwalkers, all that crazy stuff, you know, pandemics and sci-fi, that kind of thing. But now we are seeing the aftermath of that, and how and if society can rise again, of civilization can rise again in just the aftermath of a global pandemic that killed millions of people. And those are all the books that I plan on reading this week. I don't know how much I'm going to read today. I'm going to an event tonight. I am kind of nervous because I've never like been to a bar by myself. Know people who are going to be there, but it's just like, I feel nervous walking in by myself. But I'm going to a live taping of like a radio show that's also on YouTube. I will leave a link down below if you guys would like to check out the show that I'm going to. It's for my local hockey team, but it's an hour event, so not too long, but I'm still just kind of like, I don't know. I have to do like research of bar like etiquette because I'm just gonna get a Diet Pepsi. Y'all are just seeing the realness right now. And I'm like, okay, I think you do tip bartenders, so we'll tip the bartender at the restaurant. And I feel bad, like if I go in and don't get anything, that'd be like really weird in my opinion. So that's why I'm just gonna get a drink and see how things go. But that's not gonna be till later. That's at 7 o'clock, and it's currently 2:25. I'm gonna edit some of my video, the sit down video of the week, and then get into Theodosia, which I'm reading on my Kindle. It is 6 o'clock. I'm going to do my update now because I'm leaving at 6:25. So I don't think, because I want to brush my teeth and, you know, have things to do before I go out. We're gonna go over the notes. I only read, I think, 24 pages today. Not that much. I know in this one is this a lot of information to be taken in. The chapters are over an hour long according to the Kindle, which is not fun for me. But the notes for today, that in the early 1800s, like maybe even 1790s, that Britain was really wanting to put a presence in Upper Canada, which is modern day Ontario. Therefore, the Americans, they don't want that. They are not fond of the British at this point. They are scared of the British coming back, taking back what was originally theirs. You don't know what I mean, because it's stolen land. And therefore, the Americans are buying large swaths of land in present-day Ontario. And I never thought about maybe people who are Canadian, their ancestors could have originally came from America. Never thought about that. I mean, obviously that happens, but next is Meriwether Lewis gossip. If you don't know, that's Lewis from Lewis and Clark. There were rumors that he had a fling with Theodosia and that it might have even been an intimate fling. Theodosia's like original biographers from like the 1800s and 1900s who had written about her made this out to be fact, that she had this affair, because I mean they weren't married to anybody and they weren't married to each other, but that she had this relationship with Meriwether Lewis. But there's actually no proof of this, and it's really hard to be true, because he was out on the frontier in the military, she was in New York City, and none of the dates would have matched up for them to actually have had a physical relationship. They might have written letters, but there was never, the dates don't add up to say there was this intimate relationship between the two. But her biographers were writing it down as fact. But Richard and Cote goes back and looks at all the archives from the previous centuries to find out, no, that's not true. So she was linked to all these guys, but a lot of it was just gossip, but people wrote it down as fact. And that is so crazy to think about. Maybe celebrity gossip that we hear nowadays, people take it for fact, and in 200 years are people still going to be being like, that was fact, even though it was just a rumor. And lastly, this one was just kind of funny. We have the man who actually does end up marrying her, Alston. He is from Charleston, has a plantation on the Waccamaw, which is in my part of the state. And at the time it's called the Georgetown District, which the Waccamaw River does go to Georgetown. Like every river in the PD, it ends up in Georgetown. But this one, he's saying, oh, it's such a great place, and that Charleston is a fine city, because he understands that the plantation life might be boring because it's away from the city, because again, she's coming from New York City. Shows another quote from another South Carolinian at the time, who is saying that the Georgetown district, the most disease-ridden place on earth because of like malaria, and we have a lot of swamps here. And back then, they didn't have vaccines and the medication and stuff that we have today. So there's a lot of disease festers with the mosquitoes in the swamps. I would not have made it long back then, because mosquitoes, they love me. And again, I live in a swamp infested place where there's a ton of water. Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted long, but I have to thank my ancestors, because it does, in another book, it might have even been by him, that it builds up, the immunity builds up the longer it goes on. So there you have it. There's the update on Theodosia for the day. I'm sorry that's a short one, not as long as they typically are. I only read about half as much as I typically would read in a day. We are at, I think, 30% of the way into the book now. Guys, I'm back from the meet and greet. I got to meet some of my friends in person for the first time, and I got to meet my favorite player, Tom, the voice of the Ice Cats, announcer, whatever you want to call him. He introduced me to my favorite player, so like, thank you to him so much. I told the guys to tell him thank you, because I mean, honestly, a dream. I was shaking in my boots, but it was very exciting. I did take some footage of the event, and that would have been at the start of the vlog, so I hope y'all got to see the vibe. And again, I will link the show. The thing was, so I thought we would be able to hear the show, but no, you legit like could not hear it, and there you just heard the restaurant noise, And then like the DJ started playing music at one point and I'm like, is he not aware there's a show going on? But yeah, I could like barely hear, so I am gonna have to go back and watch the YouTube video that I'm going to link for y'all to watch. I felt really awkward because I was like, I came here to listen to a show and it's like, I can't hear it. And I was like, I didn't want to walk by to leave when the camera was rolling. That would be awkward. And okay, I've always been told you don't go up to famous people when they're eating, and people were just doing that. They were like throwing hockey sticks on the table, jerseys and all that. I was one of those people, and I was like, I'm sorry for taking you away from your meal. And I told him at the end, I was like, go back to your meal. I don't want to be taking you away from that. Yeah, I was just gonna wait till the end, but I was like, oh, okay, it's 8 o'clock and they're still like eating. I don't want to. Yeah, so y'all get what I'm saying. I'm sorry that I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm shook. I got to meet my favorite player, so I'm kind of starstruck over here. But I am going to get to Think of Me at 9. It is currently 8:48 is my guess. 8:49. I was one off. But I am going to get to that. But yeah, I was gonna say I hope y'all enjoyed the video, but no, this isn't the end of the video. This is only the beginning. Ended the beginning. Yeah. Joe reference. I don't know if it's, I always want to say Doge, but I think it's just Joe and there's a silent D. And people might call me a carrot. But at this stage in my life, 10 years ago I would have cared if you called me a carrot. But in 2026, I don't care if you call me a carrot. Didn't shut the door, but oh, it's Tuesday. Why do I never, like, why do I hesitate saying what day it is? I don't know, like, I know what day it is. But I read 57 pages in Theodosia today, a lot more than yesterday, like double what I read yesterday. I have a few notes, but none of these are like crazy, like standout things. Theodosia is now married. At the point where I've left off, we're about to get to the duel of Burr and Hamilton, but Theodosia is now a grown, married woman. She has moved to South Carolina. We kind of talked about that yesterday. And something I found interesting was, and I kind of knew this, but the Charleston, like, elite society, they would leave the city for the plantations, which are more Georgetown, up that way. So they would leave Charleston in late November, early December. And I'm just thinking, like, was there a ton of traffic on what is now Highway 17? But I'm just picturing all the horse carriages. But I do want to point out, and the author pointed out, even though all these rich, bougie people could do that, obviously the slaves were at the plantations year in and year out. So why were the white people, the elite people, why weren't they there? It's because, as we talked about yesterday, with the quote, deadliest, most disease-ridden place on earth, because all the marshes, all the moisture, mosquitoes, diseases, like, thrive on that. And the slaves had to stay there all year round, and we know that South Carolina in the summertime especially is not forgiving heat-wise, so just seeing this cruelty. And that was, Theodosia had a big culture shock when she came to South Carolina. Something that we never learned in school, and I learned on my own reading, is that slavery was in the northern states as well. Her father grew up in a household that owned slaves, sorry. That was a thing, and that was in New York or New Jersey. I never learned that in school at all. Learned it on my own. Like it was the book I read on the James River. I don't remember when that was. So she comes down here, and her husband owns over 200 slaves. 200 people. Over 200. That is just so bad, and obviously I knew that they own mass amounts of people. Yeah, I just, it's so hard to fathom that happened, but obviously, yeah, it did. Something else that I found interesting was that Theodosia even had tutors after she was married. She learned languages, history, all of that before she was married. When she got married, her father wanted her to know about the world around her, that'd be geography and the, like, what's going on in the world, you know, the current events is the word that I'm looking for. I'm just kind of shocked that was a thing. And then after her marriage, in our modern society, people typically go on honeymoons. I'm seeing less and less of that, but people go on honeymoons, and a common honeymoon destination is Niagara Falls. Her trip to Niagara Falls is what made that a popular location, and it still is to this day, 200 years later. So the honeymoon wasn't a traditional, what we see today, where the couple just goes off on a romantic getaway. Back then, it was typically they visited family and friends who couldn't make it to the wedding, so they started in Albany, New York, and then came south to Washington. That's how they did honeymoons back then. You visited the guests that couldn't make it. I would hate that. Like, glad that I don't have to do that. But that is all for Theodosia for the day. I wish I had like more insightful bits for you. I'm learning, but it's not having a huge impact on me whatsoever. Guys, happy Wednesday. I want to do a bit of a TV update before we get into a reading update, because I've just been doing so well with TV shows this year, as in I'm loving what I've been watching. And the first one, Life After Life, I finished that last week. I had to take a pause, but that last episode had me crying, feeling like everything. It's a BBC show on Amazon Prime in the States. That one like broke me. Fantastic. It made me realize that there are like words for thoughts that I've had in philosophy, that there are other people that think like I think, and that is just really refreshing to see that. Next, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I read that. Both of those have been adaptations that I have read the books for. It's been a while since I read A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I think I read it before COVID. And I realized today, I saw the paperback that has the TV cover, but I don't own that book in paperback because I annotate my paperbacks of the books. And that one, there was no paperback until the TV show came out. That's going to be one that I need to pick that up, because I have all of the books in hardback, paperback. I have like 4 different versions of George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, if it has to do with that universe, I legit have like 4 versions of the books. That is the one series where I buy different versions, because back in the day on BookTube, that used to be a huge thing. People were always talking about consumerism. For me, spend your money how you want to spend it. I'm not going to, okay, I might secretly judge you, but I'm not going to outright comment on your video being like, you shouldn't be buying that. No, I'm not going to be doing that. People can do what they want with their money, especially if they are paying their bills, have food in their belly, whatever. It's not putting them in debt. They're good. They're fine. They can do what they want. That's how the world works. Next, so I have been loving A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's a comedy vibe, and wholesome at times. It's not as much of a high fantasy as the other shows and books in that universe. We don't have a lot of that fantastical elements. It's really like historical fiction just set in another universe. And then lastly, the show that I started last night, Love Story, about John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. I am loving. So I've always really liked her fashion. And now seeing this show, it's 90s New York, which again is something where I've always been like, I think America and the West peaked in the 90s, and after 9/11 we've been downhill since. But really there's a lot of different points in history where you can be like, oh, this was a fracture point or whatever. But I do think the 90s were the peak of Western civilization, and who is the capital of the West? It's New York City. I know some people aren't going to agree with that. It's New York and London in my mind. I know New York isn't technically a capital, but when you think the West, I think those are the places that you think of. But again, everybody can have different opinions. Don't come for me. But the fashion, the music, and as I said, New York City, also the chemistry and banter between these actors, that is what romance, I don't know why I'm pointing over there, there's a romance book, but that is what romance writers wish they could do. I read so many books where it's just like cringy dialogue, and I'm like, why? And then I go watch this show, and it's like they're not even trying. Like, it's not cringy at all. I was giggling. I wasn't giggling. I was grinning, blushing. So good, so good. And I don't know if I'm going to watch the next episode tonight, but I am going to be continuing the series. I don't know if you can tell, I'm very tired because I watched that. I was really pumped up after watching it. I was like, how am I supposed to go to bed? I'm obsessed. And then just in my head with thoughts, not bad thoughts, but I was just like thinking. And therefore I went to bed at like 3 in the morning. I could not sleep. That is very late for me. Back in the day, no, that wasn't late, but now that is late and I am very tired. But let's talk about Theodosia. Let's do our reading update. The first note that I took today, and we talked about yesterday, of what we were seeing at the end of yesterday, is the lead up to the duel with Hamilton. We have had that happen now, and Burr was vice president when that happened. To me, that is so shocking that he was actually in office having a duel, but that's how things were done back in the 1800s. But then he became a fugitive on the run, all while being vice president. Literally so crazy that I'm gonna say we don't really see that nowadays. I mean, this book is ultimately really about Aaron Burr. Like everything I tell y'all, the majority of things of, oh, this is what's happening in the book, it revolves around Aaron Burr. This is all very misleading. Again, this is like the book we read on the Queens of Egypt, or the female pharaohs of Egypt, that there's just simply not enough to go on to write a biography of this length. I think really if we did focus just on Theodosia, the book would probably be around 100 pages. But no, this is mainly about the exploits of Aaron Burr and all the stuff that Aaron Burr was doing. One of those, after he is done being vice president, he's like, what do I do with my life after this? Because he's a disgrace after killing Hamilton. He decides to go west he first goes to Pittsburgh, which at the time I think was called Fort Pitt, or Pitt Fort, something like that. He goes west. He wants to get the western states, at this time Ohio, Indiana Territory, Kentucky, Tennessee. He wants to get these states to secede from the Union. And New Orleans he wants New Orleans, which at this time I don't know if it's technically part of the United States yet, because there's Spanish Florida, which goes from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Mississippi River. You have New Orleans in the middle of that, that Mississippi River breaking point. Then you don't get back to Spanish territory until you're kind of near Galveston, Texas, on Sabine River, I think is what it's called, over there. He is wanting those western states to secede and to make an own empire. He's told the British about this, wanting them to fund him. As I said, he wants to make a Mexican empire, that he is not Mexican, his daughter is not Mexican, but some of this land would be Mexico. So he plans to invade Mexico with a private army. He plans to go on a boat from New Orleans to Mexico and invade Mexico City. Yeah. I don't think I knew really anything about this. It's just so out there and crazy that he's doing this. And then, so he is now viewed as a traitor to the United States because he's trying to get all these other states and territories to succeed from the Union. So now he's disgraced in those territories. So now we're at a point in the book, he's like, what do I do now? So he's going to Europe. And then I always think you always find an interesting character in nonfiction who might not be the main focus. So one of them was Natalie Delage de Valout, who married Thomas Sumter Jr. And then this other guy, Herman Blennerhassett, might be pronouncing that wrong. Him and his wife were on the frontier in Marietta, Ohio, somewhere over in the Ohio, Pennsylvania area. Not sure where it is in modern times. It's changed names or whatever, because as I said, a lot of these were not states yet. But this guy, they just come over a ridge and there's this huge mansion, which is Herman's house. And Herman and his wife just really live a life of luxury and were not built for the frontier at all. So they're very out of place and very eccentric. So I have found them interesting to read about, and they were really wanting to be a part of this Mexican empire. And that is where I'm at. I am at 75%. I could finish this tomorrow, maybe. I'm at 2:46, so 60, no, that would be 80 pages, or I don't know if I'll be able to do that or not. So I don't know if I'll finish this book in this vlog. I don't know if I'm going to be finishing a book in this vlog. That's kind of scary to think about, but it's Thursday for all of you lovely people, and I was right. This book's going to take me 8 days to read. I'm great at math. I read 60-some pages in here today, which got me to 93%. There are 20 pages left in the book. I don't know how many chapters, but I'm on chapter 12. I do have 2 little notes here. The first one, Aaron Burr, he's going into exile. He's going to England first. He is still set on making an empire for himself and for his daughter and grandson. He still wants to do that. He's been like kicked out of America and he still wants to do it. But the thing is, the British, the English, whatever you want to call them, they really cooled down on it. They were like, we're not sure if we want to fund that anymore. And that is really what put an end to X, because once he goes to England, he starts to write in code under a false name, under an alias. Theodosia has an alias as well, and they refer to the plan of the empire as X. Don't know why I keep doing my arms. Sorry. But yeah, that was just so crazy to me that you go through all that and you're still planning on doing it? Like, did you not learn anything? Aaron Burr, he is such a character. I cannot wait to read Burr by Gore Vidal. I own that book. I've owned it for years. But now I'm really intrigued to see. And that book has been talked about in this one. In this, we talked about depictions of Theodosia after her disappearance. And I'm going to give my theory on the disappearance as well. But how she's been portrayed in fiction and nonfiction alike. We kind of talked about how just some theories and gossip, how over time becomes fact. It's been 200 years, and some of the stuff there's absolutely no proof of, but a lot of historians, I want to say in quotes, put it in their books as fact. And seeing how historical fiction has been one of my favorite genres. Definitely for TV is my favorite genre. And for movies, I am more of a literary fan in fiction, but I do think, there's literary historical fiction that I think my favorite book is an example of that. But let's talk about historical fiction and how it takes lives of real people who, some of them do have descendants. Now, Theodosia doesn't have any descendants alive today, but her husband's family do have descendants who are alive today. A lot of them were not happy with how they were portrayed in this book, and it was actually very sad. So Brooklyn Gardens is a very popular tourist attraction here, and it is on what would have been part of their plantation. I have not been there since. I don't know if I've ever been there actually, because we would drive by and there's these big stallion statues and they would freak me out as a kid. So I don't think I've been there, but there's a chance that maybe I had as a kid, but I know where it's at. So that is, as I said, a common tourist attraction here, like a big botanical garden with statues. They do a thing at Christmas Tree that has the Night of 1,000 Lights or something that's very difficult to get tickets to. But what I'm getting to, we have this woman who worked there. I think her last name is Chandler. She was at I think in like the Great Depression era, a folklorist who she would go to people who were once slaves and get their oral stories, that hadn't been written down, and preserved those stories. And she's done a lot of other historical work in the area, but she was like a historical curator or something, I don't know, but with the gardens. I don't know if they were technically called that back then. But an author goes and talks to her, wanting to get all this info about Theodosia and about the Alston family. That's the family Theodosia married into. And as I said, this woman was very much her, like the history of the family and of the Georgetown area was her passion. The author, I think her last name was Seton, Seton, and the book was My Theodosia, just completely like said screw it and wanted to write her own thing. She told Miss Chandler that it was all for the movies. Literally. If you're writing historical fiction and publishing it, because that book was, that author was a New York Times bestseller author, please do your research. And if you are going to change a lot, put a disclaimer, which a lot of TV shows, like the Love Story show that I'm watching, does have a disclaimer at the start of the series. So if you're going to be doing that, please do that. But I always like tell people with historical fiction, fiction is in the title of the genre, is in the name of the genre. So know that not all of it is going to be true. But let's talk about Theodosia's disappearance and what I think happened, because to my knowledge, because this book was published in the early 2000s, I do not know if there has been a confirmed this is what happened, because I will do research after I finish the book. I think she was made to walk the plank, which there is the Graveyard of the Ocean, something like that museum at Cape Hadrids in North Carolina. The curator there, he said that they only have one recorded instance of somebody ever having to walk the plank, because wood and lumber, it would just be a whole hassle to have that be a commonplace thing. But there were so many rumors all throughout the 19th century that Theodosia was made to walk the plank. I believe rumors, myths, they stem from some truth. I don't know necessarily if she walked the plank, but I do think pirates happened. This was in the peak of the War of 1812. And yeah, I think pirates probably offed her, if I'm being honest with y'all, which is awful, but I mean, that's how history is. It's not all butterflies. But let's go into the weekly wrap-up. Have I hauled any books this week? I have bought a book, but I haven't unboxed it yet. So stay tuned for my next short. I think that will come out the day before this video. So if you guys want to go watch that. I have not finished any books this week. I should finish Theodosia tomorrow. I've read over 100 pages 2 days this week. I read 64 on Monday, 103 on Tuesday, 108 on Wednesday, and I've read 69 pages today so far. We will just have to see where I get to on that. But let me give you all a sneak peek of what we're doing in next week's vlog. We are going to be reading a modern classic in the romance genre, if you will. We will be reading The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. I've seen bits and pieces of the movie. I've never read the book. It's about time we bring Nicholas Sparks around. I really liked Nicholas Sparks back when I was like 11 or 12 back in the day. The Last Song, I loved that movie. And then the one with Zac Efron where he was a veteran, I really enjoyed that. Now, would those stand the test of time? I do not know, so don't come for me. But that is the book we're going to be reading. It's like a World War II, maybe like second chance romance. Yeah, it's a classic. I think y'all know The Notebook. But the theme for the vlog, we are going to be doing my monthly reset, getting ready for the reading month of March. We will be sorting the books that I hauled. We'll be unhauling books. As I said, putting books on shelves, going through my wrap up. That is the plan. But that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you made it through this whole video, leave a heart emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!